Thank you very much, Les. Sun come round, hasn't it? And yeah, I'm really not, I wouldn't say excited, but I'm thrilled to be speaking to our guest tonight, Barton Nunnelly, a true, what I would call boots on the ground researcher in every sense of the word. Barton's probably seen and experienced more things than a lot of people are ever going to experience in a lifetime, and some of them good and a lot of them not so good, I would think. Multi-phenomena researcher, author of 4 books, the 5th book's in the pipeline. The most notable, Inhumanoids and Mysterious Kentucky. Barton, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me here.
No, you're welcome, my friend. I mean, you come with like a good recommendation from your good friend Josh Turner, and I've listened to some of the things that you've been involved in, and it's truly incredible, some of the things that you've seen and experienced in your lifetime. So I mean, before we get into that, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, Barton?
Well, there's not much to tell, Paul. I'm just a average country boy, born and raised in the river bottoms of Western Kentucky, which just so happens to be a window area where a variety of unknown phenomena tend to manifest over and over again. So, yeah, I'm just an average guy with some ordinary guy with some extraordinary experiences. That's me.
Yeah, well, I can't fault you. And I mean, I listened to a few of the things that you'd said, and you prefer truth over popularity. How good is that? Because there's so many people riding the wave of nonsense, and you're not pushing that. You're pushing the experiences that the witnesses have seen and what you've seen yourself. But can we sort of go back then to earliest beginnings, Barton? And I think we're looking at when you were aged 5, 1971. And would this be your mum's experience and your first sort of knowledge of something strange occurring?
Right. Yeah, that was really my introduction to the unexplained phenomenon of UFOs and flying saucers. We always lived in old isolated farmhouses near either the Ohio River or the Green River. And when I was 5 years old in 1971, we were living in an old isolated house, and my mother saw a UFO, or a flying saucer, come down and land behind one of the old barns out there. And that's why we moved away. We moved to the city after that for 3 or 4 years, didn't come back to the country till 1975. But that was my first introduction, to all this high strangeness that's been part of my life for so long.
Can you remember your parents talking about it? Did anything else happen in the days prior to it or afterwards? Or
Sure. Yeah. So I remember the very first thing I remember that's it's kind of odd, was we were all sitting in the kitchen, and we had a TV, a little black and white TV. We were all watching TV, and my older sister was 2 years older than me. She screamed. She was sitting by the window. She screamed out, and she told my dad that there was a monster looking in the window. And my dad, ran outside with my mother in the 12 gauge, and there was this tall man, and they thought he was wearing a brown suit, running down one of the roads that led into the back fields, and he let off a couple of shots with the 12 gauge. But we called that the brown man, and my sister described it as looking like Frankenstein. Of course, she was only about 7 years old at the time, and we had never heard of Bigfoot or anything like that. Just exposed to the monsters that we see on TV, when you're kids. So I figured she described it like that because of the prominent brow ridge, and it was likely a Bigfoot that was looking in the window, because later on I got to research that location, and I found a man who lived there in 1965, and he had problems with Bigfoot, and even made a plaster cast of one of its footprints. So we didn't know it, but we were living in an active area, for things like that. So
prior to that, did your dad have any interest in this?
Oh, no. My interest in those, when I was young, my only interest was in comic books,
What about your parents?
My parents had no interest at all in the paranormal or anything like that. We were dirt poor, and they had to spend most of their time thinking about how just to get by. You know, my dad was he was disabled, had glaucoma, and he got a check every month. And like I say, it wasn't much, and we didn't have much, you know, and they had no interest at all in any of this stuff that seems like it's sweeping across the world today. And both my parents are gone now, so I'm sure they didn't know anything about this stuff. And I know that my dad didn't know anything about Bigfoot or Dogman or anything. But my mother, you know, she told me that she saw a Dogman when she was 10 years old in Henderson County, Kentucky, and it leaned up on the window. Her and her cousins were in the living room, and this thing leaned up on the window and frightened them to death. And it was wearing an old, ragged, dirty white shirt. So, what do you do when your own mother tells you something like that? You know, do you believe her? Of course you do. You know, she's not going to lie to you for no reason. So
what do you think's happening there then, Barton? I know I'm just jumping away from you, not from your mum's sighting, but just to mechanics of what we're talking about there. And it's this thing's got a shirt on. Are we talking about some kind of transformation, do you think, then?
Well, you know, Paul, I've always thought that a human being actually transforming into an animal is, as we all know, a physical impossibility, unless there was some kind of demonic or supernatural element involved there, you know. So the older I get, the more I have to look at that and not quite dismiss it as superstition or tall tales or lying. I've talked to this guy just recently from Italy. He's a famous comic book artist, and he tells me that he actually saw a wolf-like creature transform into a woman. So, and it was in the blink of an eye. And so, you know, maybe it's not a physical transformation taking place, but more of maybe it has to do with the perception of people that are witnessing this individual. So, yeah, I don't know. The jury's still out, but I've always kind of dismissed the shapeshifter theory as being quite ludicrous. But the more I learn about the spiritual world and the powers of the evil demonic entities that constantly messing with human beings, you know, the more I have to kind of keep my mind open about that.
Yeah, it's an hard one to get your head around. And
right, and I hate to do it. I hate to think that it's possible for a human being to change into an animal, but you know, the more I know and the more I find out, it's really kind of like the less I understand. So I'm just a seeker of truth, and when I find the truth, I tell people. You know, I've interviewed hundreds of witnesses. I've been doing this since 1985, and they always feel helpless. You know, and what can I do? I mean, what am I supposed to do? Well, the only thing that you can do when you witness something like that is to stand up and tell the truth. You know, just be true. And knowledge is power. So the more people who have this knowledge that these things are real and people are seeing them and they're actually walking around in our world, the more power they'll have to deal with it. You know, we've been spoon-fed a narrative about the reality of our world that doesn't include Inhumanoids, and that's a false narrative. So we need to somehow get past that and just tell the truth. And hopefully, the more people who know, the more people will open their eyes. You know, maybe some kind of understanding will take place soon.
Do you think there's a shift in acceptance of unexplained phenomena across the board, not just the cryptids, but across the board in the last decade? Do you think we see more and more people open to the idea? I do.
Sure. Especially in the last 5 years, everything seems to be just ramping up. It's just speeding up. And, you know, everybody says that the veil between worlds is thinning. Well, yeah, I'd say so, because we're having a lot of things happen now. And we've already had soft disclosures of UFOs and chimeras. So if people were paying attention, they'll know that that's not woo any longer. You know, if I've seen UFOs dozens of times, and you know, certain people you tell about it's woo, it's woo, it's woo. You know, if you say that word 3 or 4 times really quick, you sound just like a little choo-choo twang. So, and Dogman and these Inhumanoids, I don't call them cryptids at all, because cryptids, by definition, are natural animals rumored to exist, but not yet classified, right? And Bigfoot and Dogman and Mothman, creatures like this, they're not natural animals, you know. They have abilities that no natural animal on Earth has. The Bigfoot, I know personally from personal experience, and I don't care how crazy it sounds or who doesn't believe me. All I can do is tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. But I know from personal experience that these things can achieve a state of invisibility, complete and total invisibility, and interact with you that way, or they can appear and disappear at will, completely vanish from a location, which is teleportation. So I know these things are real, and I know no natural animal can become invisible to the human eye like that. And I know Gigantopithecus blackie could not teleport itself from one location to another. It couldn't walk across a muddy field without leaving footprints. It can't speak to people in their own language, you know. And as far as I know, Gigantopithecus has never even been accused of having any of these abilities. But these Bigfoot creatures actually do. And so take it or leave it. I mean, that's the truth. And I'm going to sit here and tell you guys the truth no matter what you ask me. So, and it doesn't matter if I'm popular or not, because the truth is really the most unpopular thing you can offer anyone. So
I don't think it's unpopular what you're saying. People might not agree with it. I personally agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I love the term Inhumanoids. And now you've explained it better to me. You know, seriously, because up until the last few weeks, I've not really done any research on you, Barton, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I just want to take a moment just to ask the people in the chat to put questions to Barton in capital letters. Send them to Alison. She'll fire them at Les, because we do want some questions. We want to know your views on what Barton's talking about, because on a lot of what he's talking about, I'm on the same page. Before we leave this sighting that your mum had in 1971, the hairy man, or the brown man, you call it, the brown man.
Yeah.
How soon after did your mum see the UFO?
It was maybe a month later. Yeah, it wasn't very long, and it was a great location. You know, for us kids, we didn't have any neighbors for miles. You know, and there were 5 of us kids then. Six. One was on the way. So, yeah, and the fields were full of Indian artifacts, and you know, that's one of my first hobbies, other than reading comic books, was finding Indian arrowheads. Me and my brother, we'd go out, you know, after every rain and pick up 30 or 40 or 50 arrowheads, and 3 burial mounds there on the property. So I've come to understand that certain things are related to the appearance of these Inhumanoids, and it's cemeteries, whether they're ancient or new, underground tunnels or caverns, and the presence of water. So when you have all these 3 ingredients together in one location, you're more than likely going to have some kind of inhumanoid sighting or experiences in that location. So
you're actually talking how things that we've touched on during the making of Wolflands: the burial mounds, the earthworks, the ancient barrow cemeteries,
right,
and the running water. So you're touching on that, and these were questions, or a question I was going to get to later. But seeing as you're on about them now, Barton, underground cave systems, we touched on is it the Mammoth Cave?
Yeah, Mammoth Cave system in south central Kentucky. It's the largest underground cave system in the known world. There's already been over 400 miles of passages discovered, and experts estimate that there is over 600 miles left to go. So, you know, there's no telling what can be down there. You know, it's also one of the rumored entrances to the fabled underground kingdom of Agartha.
Agartha, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, there's really no telling. I've often wondered if most of these Inhumanoids don't originate from there and just, you know, spread out across the country from there, you know. So,
and the Inhumanoids, are other types of phenomena seen around the cave systems, seen around the burial mounds that were on your parents' property back then? light forms, spheres of light, UFOs? Is it all multi-phenomena that's seen, or primarily the Inhumanoids?
Right. So I lived in 3 locations in my life, Paul, and really brought home to me the connectivity of all these unexplained phenomena. So I'm living in a haunted house, and outside we have UFOs being seen regularly, and Bigfoot being seen regularly, as well as Black Panthers and other things. And so, it seems to me that the chances of encountering a Bigfoot would be pretty slim, right? But what are the chances of encountering a Bigfoot while you're living in a haunted house and UFOs are buzzing around your property? So it would seem an impossibility, that would happen. But yet it's happened to me 3 times. So I know all these things are connected. And we just have to connect the dots and come up with a logical conclusion as to what these things are.
Yeah. Do you think then that part of the connection is the location?
Yeah, I really do. Like I say, every one of my experiences has taken place within sight of a river, a burial mound, or cave. So I think that does have something to do with the locations that they manifest and they frequent. Yes, I really do.
So obviously, I'd love to touch on the Inhumanoids a lot more, and the UFOs more. But Black Panthers, do you know where we are in eastern North Yorkshire?
Right.
Every year, not once every decade, every year people are reporting seeing large black cats, Labrador dog-sized black cats, and bigger, and in this particular area. Now, I can kind of believe, due to the Wildlife Act that got brought into force in 1976 in the United Kingdom, that people who owned them as exotic pets probably let some of them go. But they'd have been long since deceased unless they're bred. But where we're seeing them, Barton, we're seeing them on lanes. There's a lane, and our listeners might recognise what I'm going to say. There's a lane called Short Lane. It's only a mile long. It's got farmland either side of it, no great trees or anything, but people report seeing black cats on Short Lane. They report seeing UFOs on Short Lane. So there's not a lot of difference in what you're talking about here. It's just different parts of the world. So
right.
What's your views on the Panthers? Are they actually living and breeding in the forests and around the areas where you've researched, or are they not native to that area?
Well, as you know, there are no melanistic pumas native to North America. So, but I really do think that these are likely to be real cryptids, and that they're living flesh and blood animals that just happen to be where they are. I mean, I've seen them 3 times in my life. So twice in broad daylight, once at night, and the first time I saw it in broad daylight, it was being chased out of a creek by some large. It looked like a wolf, a big gray wolf. If you can imagine, it's a huge wolf. It was chased out of a creek bed. I was trying to drink water, and it jumped up out of there and ran across this field we were walking in, looking for arrowheads, and we watched it run across this whole field. And so I know they're there. I know they're not supposed to be there. I know people, the officials deny that they're there. But I do honestly think that they could be living, breathing cryptids that we could possibly capture or whatever for study or whatever. But the DNR will go just bend over backwards to tell you that no Black Panthers exist in Kentucky. But I can assure you that tens of thousands of Kentuckians, and not just Kentuckians, but people all around the world, we know they exist because we see them. And we don't have any problems taking what we've seen with our own eyes as evidence. Personal experience is still a very valid way to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
And so when you see things, especially when they're repeated to you over and over again, then you know that they're real. And it doesn't matter who wants to debate you, whether it's an Einstein or some high schooler. They're going to debate you using their opinion and you use your experience, and they're going to lose every time. You just can't debate experience with opinion.
Well,
Experience
no,
wins
because
out.
you've seen it. I mean, no matter what they
Right.
believe, these have seen it. Am I right in saying that most of your experiences, then, Barton, are documented in your first book, Mysterious Kentucky?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct,
And
Paul. I've written about
do
almost
you,
everything, every unexplained instance and incident that ever happened to me in one or the other of my books. Not quite everything, but just about everything. Yes.
do you want to tell us about a few of the UFO sightings or reports from other people within the book or within the books as a whole?
Right. So here in Western Kentucky, UFOs are so common that no one even bothers to report them anymore. Used to, once or twice a year, you'd hear on the newscasts around here, UFO sighted here or there, and no one knows what it is, blah blah blah. But now you don't even hear that. But they're so common here that I just can't imagine anyone here that hasn't seen one yet. And I've seen them, like I said, dozens and dozens of times. I don't know what they are. I've called the local airport there in Geneva, Kentucky, several times, asking what was up in the sky, and they would tell me, "Well, we don't have anything on radar, so there's nothing there." And I'll be like, "Well, I'm watching it right now. There's 3 or 4 objects zipping in and out of this one cloud over here, and it's something there, Well, it's not showing up on radar, and that would be the extent of that. But yeah, I've seen UFOs. I saw one elliptical UFO driving home from Owensboro one day about 20 years ago, and it was an elliptical light. It was round and it had a tail going back, and it flew into a cloud. And the other side of the cloud, a black airplane flew out. So
what do you think's happened there then? I mean, we know it's speculation, but do you think that this object then has presented as something more acceptable to the human eye?
Right. I believe these things are all tied together, and they can manifest themselves as whatever they need to get the witness to come to some wrong conclusions or some false paradigms. Right. We all have our own different belief systems, but if someone saw a UFO, they would automatically think that it's from outer space. But I don't believe that's the case at all. I do not believe in. I know this may sound strange for me to say this, but I do not believe in alien life forms from distant galaxies coming to this Earth. I think what we have here may be pretending to be such, but they've been here for as long as we have.
Yeah, honestly, you don't know this, but you're echoing a lot of things that I say myself.
Oh, really?
So I don't think I'd say I do not think that these things are traveling from distant galaxies.
No.
There may be, but I think they're already here.
Right. And if they're so advanced to travel from, light years away, why are they acting like barbarians? Why do they terrorize the witnesses? They abduct the witnesses. They mutilate the witnesses. They kidnap them, torture them. So that's not something that an advanced civilization would even need to do, So I judge the things by their actions and not what they say they are, but by what they actually do. And that's nothing good.
I mean, I'm not. We say that, but we can't think for these things, can we? And what their sort of objectives may be totally different to what we believe. And right. I'm on the same page with you that I think that they're already here. But what we think as important, they might not even consider of any importance. I don't know. They might just look at us as like we look upon cattle and sheep. It's hard to say, isn't it? You know when you've been in the forests then, and when you've been researching, have you met people who claim to have had up close and personal experiences with the occupants of the UFOs?
Paul, it's one thing I find it kind of odd. And 40 years of researching, on the boots on the ground research, I've never come across one single witness that claims to have been abducted by aliens. Not one.
No.
So I really can't answer that question with any knowledge. I've read thousands of cases of where people have claimed to be abducted, but personally, I've never come across anyone that's claimed that.
Yeah, once again, picture behind you in this book, The Night People, my experiences with these strange beings as a child and in my mid to late 20s. However, I don't think I would ever taken anywhere. I've no knowledge, I've no recollection, I've no memories of ever being taken anywhere. It occurred here, you know,
Right.
on terra firma. So, but that don't mean it's not happening. But I can sort of relate to what you're saying there. So, Mysterious Kentucky. Have you any accounts that you want to tell us about as regards the Inhumanoids, personal accounts of your own in later years, and then we can jump to the Scottsville Monster, if you like, unless you want to start talk about that now.
Well, you know, as far as personal experiences with Inhumanoids, I've had a few, but the ones that are the most frightening to me is not the ones where I could actually see the Bigfoot, which I've seen twice, but the ones where I couldn't see the Bigfoot. You know, in 1987, my little brother and I were surrounded in this haunted graveyard. We was fishing in a lake there, a big lake there, but there were two graveyards, and it was called Spook Hill, and we were always warned our whole life not to go back there. You know, and we lived on the other side of town, but we got up in our 20s, and we finally got up enough courage to go trespass onto this property and try to catch some big fish. Because we always heard that there was monster bass in this lake. And, you know, my family, I come from a family of outdoorsmen. We're hunters, we're fishermen. We spend a lot of time outside and hardly any time inside. But yeah, so we were there, and we found ourselves stranded on the wrong side of the lake when night came. And all of a sudden...
so you've just walked around this lake. You've not gone across on a boat?
Right. So there was 4 or 5 of us there. We had a one-man bass boat,
right,
which would only hold 2 people. So my brother and I decided to walk around the lake while my other brother was ferrying our other guests there back and forth. And it took forever to get them across the other side. But, you know, the lake was full of water moccasins, and the woods around the lake was full of water moccasins too. So it was a real dangerous spot.
Barton, just, I know what they are, but just for our listeners, some of them in UK might not know what a water moccasin is. So,
okay. So water moccasins are a very dangerous and poisonous snake. They're also known as cottonmouths to some people. And you trust me, you don't want to get bit by one of these things. But we were stranded on the other side of the lake waiting for our brother. Night had fallen, and I just built a little fire. Luckily, one of us had thought to bring a half a gallon of kerosene with us. And I just had built a fire. It had rained a couple of days previously, and there wasn't very much wood. We just had a small fire going, and as soon as dark fell, the woods erupted into just the craziest commotion that you'd ever heard. Sounds of breaking limbs and trees, and heavy footsteps just started surrounding us, you know. And I would wait till they got close, and we both thought we was going to die. But we both knew exactly what it was from the first tree snap, because we'd already lived through the Scottsville Monster episode 10 years previously. And so I'd wait till they get really close, and then I'd throw a shot of kerosene into that fire. It would blaze up, and we wanted to see what was going to kill us, you know, but there was nothing there. And this happened over and over again. When the fire died, the firelight dwindled, the sounds came back, and it was right at the edge of the firelight. And I must have threw some kerosene into that fire 6 or 8 or 10 times, and finally I had one more little bit of kerosene left, and I waited till the sounds got within 10 feet of us, and it sounded like there was 4 or 5 of these creatures out there just going around us in circles like elephants. And I waited till it got that close and threw that last of the kerosene in there, and there was nothing there. So I know these things can achieve invisibility to the human eye. And we at the end, I asked my brother, "So were you ready to swim?" You know, we were going to swim across the lake. We had to leave. You had to get out of there. And just then, my brother hollered out, "Hey, what's going on over there?" And he was almost back to us, and we started jumping up and down, hollering and everything, because the sounds of breaking limbs and tree limbs and footsteps came right down to the edge of the lake with us where there was no trees. So I come to think of that possibly as a artificially induced auditory hallucination, which these things are another ability that these things have. But my brother, he finally got to the bank and to the lake bank and said, okay, who's next? And I said, we're both next. And he goes, no, there's no way, Bubba. This is a one-man boat. There's no way it's going to hold 3 people. I said, well, we're going to find out. And if it don't, we'll all 3 swim to the back to the side with the car was on. So we got in that boat and we were like a quarter-inch away from sinking that boat. And it took about an hour to get across the lake, but we were never so glad to get out of a place in our lives. That was the second scariest moment of my life.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrifying. Yeah.
During that, the tree limbs breaking, I mean, if you've time, you need to look back through Truth Proof live streams, because we've done an interview with a guy who's been in some woods at Warncliffe Woods in UK, and he describes something just not carbon copy of what you've just talked about, but very, very close. All night long, these things, he realized there were more than one. Les knows who I'm talking about, and our listeners will. And they're circling him. He says, and then it'd go quiet. He said, and it was terrifying. We realized, first of all, he only thought there were one. And I think there were 3 guys. He says, and they're circling the camp. There's tree limbs breaking. He says, they're breaking. It sounds like gunshots going off, the smashing of these tree limbs. And then it goes silent. Yeah. He said, and then about 10 to 20 minutes would elapse. And then it'd start again. And it went all the way through the night. They thought they were going to die that night. Genuinely thought they were going to die. And he's probably listening to it now. And
we did too, yeah. We thought that was the end of us, yeah. Because like I say, we knew what it was from the first tree snap, because there is no animal in Kentucky that will approach 2 men at night with a campfire going. There is not one.
No.
Unless you include Bigfoot, which is not an animal. And that's why I don't call it a cryptid, because it's not an animal.
I love the term, and I'm good. Providing you don't mind, I'm going to use it. I'm going to describe these things, because I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.
No, it's brilliant, and I'd credit you every time. Not every time, because I might be using it a lot, but obviously you're the man that's come up with that terminology, and it's a really good way to describe these things.
Right, so it's a much better descriptor of what we're dealing with than
without a
natural animal.
So you'd gone to an old is what an Indian burial ground? What this graveyard that you'd gone to, is that where you'd gone that night on the boat?
Well, so no, that was in the Geneva Bottoms, and there's Indian burial mounds all over, and all the fields. We hunted all the fields for artifacts for a long time. So yeah, and it's real close, within half a mile of the Ohio River. So yeah, it's the Indian factor, Native American factor, is one that people should pay a little bit more attention to, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Mostly where these Native Americans were, where they lived and they camped and lived their lives, and these things here seem to be in the same areas.
So have you formed any conclusions why they're in the same areas as the ancient earthworks and burial mounds and barrow cemeteries?
Well, no, not any firm conclusions, Paul. Everything is guesswork, but I think it's probably these areas where the veil between the spiritual world and the physical world is probably the thinnest, and they seem to have no problems coming through here. And once they come through, they don't leave. They're not migratory. Inhumanoids are not migratory. They're not necessarily nocturnal. That's just attempts by humans to place characteristics of known animals onto these unknown creatures. So this area, at least in Western Kentucky, these things don't leave. They're here year round. People see them year round, and have been since, probably since the settlers arrived here.
Because we'll just stay with burial mounds for a moment, then we'll just see whether Les has got any questions. But before we do that, what kind of things have they found? The mound builders, what kind of things have been found in these areas besides arrowheads? Are the stories of giant skeletons and other incredible artifacts that you have knowledge of?
So Geneva, you know, people tend to disregard the old newspaper clippings, you know, as sensationalist journalism. But, you know, there's so many thousands of them that it's hard to do. But Geneva was a place where there used to be 10 mounds there a couple hundred years ago, and they found evidence of a pre-Indian civilization inside the mounds where they worked glass artifacts and stuff like that. And right out here in Scottsville, they allegedly found a 12-foot skeleton when they were building a little bridge that just spanned a creek. And I asked the guy who told me this, I said, well, what happened to the skeleton? And he said, people just took bones. They just took them home. The Smithsonian didn't come get them. They're still around in private collections, or they've already been discarded because the person who took them has passed on, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you do when your great-grandfather passes on and he's got this big bone and you don't know what it is? Well, you just throw it out, you know. That's what happened in there. But yeah, Henderson is a place where a lot of mysterious things have been discovered in the past, allegedly. And I found glass artifacts there in the location of the 10 mounds, which is due to erosion and cultivation. The mounds no longer exist, but the locations are still there. And I have found things like glass scrapers and stuff like that there. So
so the evidence
a lot of history here.
Brilliant. Honestly, Barton, it's fabulous. And I'm deliberately dragging it because I want to talk about the Scottsville Monster and the LBL. But if Les has got any questions, are you good to answer a few questions, Barton?
Sure.
Excellent. Let's see whether he's got some. Thank you.
Wow. Great show so far, guys. And thank you very much, Barton, for coming on to tonight's show.
You're welcome, Les.
Yeah. I apologise. At the top of the show, I did have microphone issues again. Hopefully everything's okay now. Just let us know in the chat if you can hear me. I've got a question from Robert Baker. Barton, it's for both of you actually. What do you both think about Todd Standing's footage? Is it real or fake?
Well, I know Barton's going to have more knowledge on this than myself.
Well, I hate to bust anyone's bubble, but Todd Standing is a known hoaxer, and I don't pay much attention to what anyone says when it comes to Bigfoot and stuff like that. Regardless of reputation, you know, everybody has their own opinions, and I have my experiences that I go by, and that's my main focus. But Todd Standing is a known hoaxer like Rick Dyer, and I don't give credence to anything that he says personally.
No, fair comment. And I haven't got enough knowledge. I've seen the footage. I don't know the man, so I can't really comment. I mean, before we leave it, then these close-up images and the eyes blinking and everything. And what were your first impressions?
So, did you know, Paul, that Todd Standing's girlfriend is a professional makeup artist?
Brilliant.
Special effects artist.
I didn't.
And if you put that close-up face with the thing blinking and everything up next to a picture of Todd Standing's face, you'll see that it has the exact same facial structure, the same type of mouth, same type eyes, you know. So to me, that's Todd Standing and his girlfriend doing a little special effects for everybody. That's all it is to me. But I don't need anything like that to prove to me that Bigfoot is real. A lot of people think they're totally surprised when I tell them that I think the Patterson-Gimlin film is likely a hoax. You know, it's just because of things that I know and things that I've seen. And like I say, I don't need anything or anybody to try to prove to me Bigfoot is real, because I already know. And if a photograph or a video is fake, that doesn't bother me at all.
No.
But one thing about the Patterson-Gimlin film, even if it is fake, it's brought millions of people over to the belief that, or the possibility that these creatures could exist, which is a good thing because I know that they do.
Yeah. Right then, before we leave that bit, then, so and I'm not saying it's fake or genuine. Why would you think it's fake? What brings you to that? Is it the walk? Is it certain characteristics of what you're looking at? Or
No,
you've
not
learned
at
about
all.
the people?
Well, it's you have to look a little bit into Roger Patterson's way of life, let's say, and he was a pretty good con man, and someone paid him $10,000 or whatever to go film Bigfoot, and I'll be damned if he didn't go do it first try. Also, I've studied. I wanted to be an artist. When I was young, I fancied I would be an artist when I grew up, but didn't turn out that way. But I studied a lot of animal anatomy and musculature, especially of primates, monkeys, gorillas, stuff like that. The musculature of Patty's right arm doesn't match any anatomy of any primate that I've ever studied. Also, the biggest factor to me is what I call the hip waiter crease, which is right at the very top of its right leg, right below its waist, where the leg joins the hip. If you just watch that one area and don't watch anything else of that Patterson film, I would like someone to explain to me why that horizontal crease is all the way across the top leg when there is no precedent for that in any kind of primate musculature. We don't have a crease that goes all the way across our leg, top of our leg. So just that one, and Hieronymus's his account. I know everybody says, well, it couldn't be him. He can't even remember where the Bluff Creek location was at. Well, he's like 80 years old, and I'm only 56, and I find myself forgetting details. So
yeah.
The walk is exactly the same. People say you can't reproduce Patty's walk. Well, Bob Gimlin does it every time he takes a step. So, Bob Hieronymus, rather. So I believe it was actually Hieronymus in that suit. He came forward because Gimlin and Patterson didn't pay him the money, the $1,000 they were supposed to pay him, and like I say, they made a lot of money off that, and they're still making money. So I really honestly believe it's a hoax. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert at anything, other than maybe house painting. I have my own experiences, my own sightings, and that's what I go by. But I'm not an expert at anything.
Well, no, good enough answer. Thank you. Another question, Les?
Yeah, and I'll just put a question in there myself, actually. That's somebody calling you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, Les?
Yeah, I ain't got to the question, so we're okay there. The question from me, Barton, is the Gimlin Patterson film. Was there any more footage taken? Because whether I picked up rightly or wrongly, that there was actually some more footage to go with that footage that everybody's seen. No?
Not that I'm aware of. I know I've heard M.K. Davis come out with the Bigfoot massacre theory, which is totally ridiculous. I'm not trying to put M.K. down. He's done a lot of good work, but the Bigfoot massacre theory is not true. He got that from a artifact of the old film, and it was a color, a little splotch of red, and that it all came from that one little detail, and it was just an artifact of such an old film. But I don't believe that we can kill Bigfoot. I don't believe that we can interfere with Bigfoot in any way, and if we could, we already would have. And we had 5 or 6 people out on top of my house, the roof of our house in Scottsville, 1975, all of them unloaded on this creature with high-powered rifles and shotguns and deer slugs and everything, and there was no blood, there was nothing there but a dead dog there the next day. So
excellent, and I know we're going to get to that in the next 10 minutes, I would think, but another question, please, Les.
Yeah, I got a question from Valiant Lonely. Valiant Looney is asking, hi Barton, would you say that the Bigfoot is a Gigantopithecus or some other species unknown to us? I know you touched on this earlier, Barton.
Right,
just want to definitely
an unknown species. Like I say, Gigantopithecus blacki has never been accused of having any supernatural traits or abilities at all like these Bigfoot do. And I know that they have them because I've experienced it myself, and I've talked to other people whom I trust and I know are good people, and they're not going to lie for no reason. So definitely not Gigantopithecus blackie. And I think they're interdimensional in the sense that we have two dimensions that I worry about, and that's it. For me, I don't have to think about any other one. That's the spiritual dimension and the physical one. So I think that when these things come into our dimension from the spiritual dimension, that they're physical. But when they go back to wherever they come from, they're not. And that's why we can't kill one. We can't capture one. We can't take a decent picture other than the Patterson-Gimlin. They took a good one. Nobody else can in 50 or 60 years since then. We can't study them in their natural environment. We don't know where they live. You know, everything points to something other than a completely physical creature. And the people who think that they're an evolutionary throwback or whatever, a relic hominid, that theory only brings more questions than it answers. You know, you have to tell me how these things could do all these miraculous feats if they're just descendants of Gigantopithecus. So, like I say, Gigantopithecus was never accused of having any amazing abilities, you know, unusual abilities, but these Bigfoot creatures do. So, definitely do not think they're descendants of Gigantopithecus. No.
No, I'm on the same page once again. Totally agree. I struggle with the primate kind of theory altogether.
Right.
Yeah, I've spoken on quite a lot of podcasts, just like you've spoken on quite a few, a lot yourself, Barton. And when you listen to other people talking, and the hunters who firmly believe that these things are living, breathing, flesh and blood creatures, and then they talk about lining them up. I mean, don't forget, Barton, you're going to have to bear with me here. We don't have the gun laws, the guns that you've got in where you live, and that, you know, we've got nothing here really apart from pellet guns. But when they talk about lining these things up in the site, centre mass, 30-yard 6, shooting this thing and it has no effect, yet they still believe it's a normal flesh and blood creature. And I think to myself, you need to give yourselves give your heads a good shake, people, because all these people can't be lying. They've got so many attributes that just take them so far away from the normal that it's that's why it's refreshing to. I know some of our listeners and some people listening to this afterwards aren't going to agree with me or you, but to me, it's refreshing hearing somebody talking like this, because they're real. There's too many people coming forwards talking about what they've seen and experienced. I mean, we're just citing Wolflands and our incredible witnesses who are stand by 100%. I'll jump off fence any time of day and stand by these witnesses. And they've seen something that is far and above anything normal. And my little rant there, Barton, I'm sorry, but yeah.
No, that's all right, Paul. So really, at the end of the day, all we can do is stand up and tell the truth, no matter how ridiculous it sounds to some people. You know, that's what I do. When I lay my head down on the pillow at night, I know that I've told no lies. And despite how many believe me or not, I've done all that I can do. You know, there's nothing really that we can do about these things or about the way that they're being denied and their existence being hidden from us. So other than stand up and being true and telling what happened and what you've seen, and don't lie. So if you do that, then you've done all you can do.
Yep.
And it doesn't really matter who believes you or not. That's not up to you. What is up to you is whether you tell people what you've seen or if you remain silent. Now, the establishments want you to remain silent. They want to control the narrative that these things are an evolutionary throwback to Gigantopithecus, which they are not. I assure you they are not.
Excellent. More questions, Les? Or have we done?
Yeah, no, I might be able to squeeze a couple more in.
Are you good with questions, Les? Are you, sorry, Barton, are you good to answer more?
Sure, Paul. Yeah. I'll answer every question. As long as they want to hear the truth, I'll answer.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to blow smoke up anyone's butt and tell them what, you know, I think they want to hear. That's not how I operate. It's strictly the truth, and the truth according to experience and not opinion. That's the main part.
Yeah, I've got a little account here from Jojo. Hi, Barton. Same time, 2 years in a row, December the 16th, 2020 to 2021. I heard a long howling sound, too long to be a man or domestic animal. Do you think there's a crossover of dimensions? Paul is also aware of this.
Yeah, so before we get to Barton's thoughts on this, I'll help Joe out a little bit with this, because we've spoke on numerous occasions about it, and this is an ancient earthworks called Dane's Dyke, which is 2.25 miles long, and people thought it were dug by the Vikings, Barton, but it weren't. Due to artifacts that are found, they know it's Neolithic, so it goes back a lot further. But we've got reports of bipedal, fur-covered creatures being seen in and around Dane's Dyke. And what Joe lives quite close, probably a couple of fields away, looking onto the dike, heard on December the 16th. She described it as sounding almost like a human in distress, a wolf howling, just something she'd never heard before, but not just once. It went on for a long time, and the lung capacity extended for a long time. And just, I know we're going to get to what you think to this, but that's 2 times on December the 16th. On October of 2019 and October of 2021, we've got 2 sightings, one in the dike and one about half a mile away, 3/4 mile away. And we've got a guy who did the grounds of the golf course that's on the opposite side of the dike, describing this strange, unearthly sound that his 2 Staffordshire Bull Terriers wouldn't enter the woods or do anything. They were frightened. So what Joe's describing and what I've just gone on about in a long-winded way, what are your views? We know it's only speculation here, Barton, because you've not been there, you've not been in ground zero, so to speak, but she's heard this. She alerted me to it the first time and the second time. And we don't have anything with that kind of lung capacity that could extend this weird howl. Do you hear things like that?
I don't know of any creature on Earth that can scream, especially at the volumes that these things can attain, for 20 seconds or more. I mean, you'd have to have a couple of sets of lungs at least to do that. So again, it's just another strange ability and that these things have that ordinary animals don't have. And I think that a lot of these sounds that people hear when it comes to things like tree knocks and stuff like that and breaking limbs and everything like that are being made by the creatures themselves vocally.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, you know, how many times have you heard of someone having an encounter with Bigfoot in the limbs, or they hear the crashing, breaking limbs, and this thing bursts out of the forest? Well, if it was really doing that, you should be able to track these things back to where they live, right? I've never once, and I've been all over Kentucky, I've never once came across a trail like that of broken limbs. And I think honestly that they're doing it with their
projecting
vocals.
some kind of
auditory hallucination, if you will.
Because what you experienced the side of that lake, in reality, I don't know, you probably didn't feel brave enough to go back the next day or the
No,
week
I never
later.
went back.
Yeah, but if you had have gone back, you would have expected to have seen carnage, the trees
Sure.
smashed to bits.
Yeah. And I
But you must have
realized that I
experienced-
wouldn't have seen that, Paul, because the sounds, like I said, followed us down to the edge, almost to the edge of the water where there was no trees. There were mainly bushes, you know. So that night I'm thinking, well, how can I be hearing breaking branches down here? You know, we're getting ready to jump in this lake and swim. There's no trees here. So I've been thinking, like I said, I've had a long time to think about this stuff. And I've come to think that a lot of the sounds people hear are being produced by the creatures themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just jumping back to Warncliffe Woods and the guys in the woods back in 87. And he said that these branches that were breaking, they sounded like gunshots. They were that loud, but it was splitting timber. Yeah, right. And I don't think he reported or noticed any smashed up trees on the way out. That's something I never asked him. And I think it's something he would have noticed on the way out if that were to happen. Right. Do you think it's just to induce fear?
Well, probably so, Paul, because it really works. I have to tell you.
Yeah.
And I'm not really scared of anything, and I've never let my experiences, my negative experiences with these humanoid creatures, interfere with my enjoyment of life. I still go out in the woods. I still hunt arrowheads. I'm in the creeks, regularly. But a lot of people, when something like this happens to them, they'll never go back. And me and my brother never went back to that haunted lake.
No.
I didn't care if what was there, what evidence was to see. I just didn't want to put myself back in that position.
You've not tempted all these years on?
Right. Not even tempted. No.
No. No. Okay, then. Right. We'll see if Les has got a few more questions, then talk about a few more of these incredible encounters, please, Barton.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I've got quite a few good questions on tonight's list. But first of all, I'm just going to play the little trailer for this year's Awakening Conference, which I think Paul Sinclair will be there. Let's see what Paul's going to say.
Hello, Paul Sinclair here, and I'd just like to say that I'm very much looking forward to speaking at the Forbidden Knowledge World Tour in conjunction with the Awakening Expo in Manchester this year. The conference takes place on the 25th to the 27th of August, and at the conference I will be talking about my own experiences from childhood to present day. I look forward to seeing old and new faces. Let's make it a fabulous weekend for all involved. Thank you.
Yeah, great trailer there, Paul.
Thank you.
And that's the Awakening Conference this year, August. So, and that's in
Les.
Manchester, UK.
This might be a good moment, and I know Barton's not into self-promotion, but I think we should find out where people can obtain Barton's books, and then we can move on to other things. Have you got a website, Barton, or are they on Amazon?
Yeah, they're on Amazon.com, Paul. I don't have a website. Like you say, I don't promote myself. I don't sell my own books. I'm not really interested in any of that. And the only thing I'm interested in doing is telling people the truth. So, if you guys want to buy my books, God bless you. I need the money. So just go to Amazon.com and then pick them up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Barton, I've added the links in the description for tonight's show. So if anybody wants to get over there and buy any of Barton's books, they're all listed on there. Right, I've got a question. Yeah, I've got a question from Silver Fox. And by the way, just before I get on to Silver Fox's question, if you will like, share, and click the bell icon, and for this video, that will help our the numbers greatly. So the algorithms, that's the word I was looking for. So from Silver Fox then, Barton, what's your take on government messing with human/wolf DNA for military purposes?
So if you'd asked me this question a year ago, I would have totally been skeptical of that. But since they come out with the bill trying to limit the kind of chimeras they can experiment with and create, I'm not skeptical at all. Once the U.S. government, if it ever discloses anything publicly, you can bet that it's been working on it privately for 50 to 70 years. So I do believe, especially now, that the government is involved with genetically engineering these chimeras, whether it's a dog man or a goat man or a lizard man or whatever inhumanoid type deal they want to create, then they have full freedom to create that. And I know they've been doing it. So I know that's a lot of probably what people have been seeing the last several decades. And I just now, I've been talking to a scientist, and he's probably the most qualified witness I've ever spoken to in my life. I've been speaking to him for about 2 months now regarding his observations of the land between the lakes in Kentucky. And he wrote me a 4-page letter, and it was really quite sensational. He'd been waiting to talk to me for 20 years. because he was underfunding and couldn't speak about these things. But now he's not. He's telling me all these things, and his observations about the national parks in Kentucky include government people in white vans. So I know the government's there, and he's heard underground activity like drilling and explosions and drilling and stuff like that. So I know they're doing stuff underground there, and they're letting the park basically go back to nature. They don't want people there. So,
but did he sort of give you any indication if it were to do with what we would term the unexplained phenomena? I'm assuming he must have done.
Yes. I'm a put a video out.
You're limited to what you can say, are you?
Right, limited what I can say, but they are involved with what's going on at the LBL. Let's just put it that way. And as soon as I put out this next video, people will get a lot of answers regarding that location. You know, I've been researching that location for 15 years now, and looking for answers, looking, and never being able to find anything. And suddenly, I have a scientist, like I say, the most qualified witness I've ever spoken to, letting me know what's going on. So
this is
everybody tune in to the Inhumanoids with Barton Nunnelly YouTube channel, and that video is going to be out real soon.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that people follow Barton's channel because, yeah, it'd be informative. So if we've done with questions, Les, have you got one more?
Yeah, I might be able to squeeze this one in for now.
Right.
And this one is from, let's have a look, Richard Van. Barton, what is your view on the Bigfoots and dogmen being responsible for people disappearing?
So my view on that is it's real, it's true. So the Bigfoot, you know, a lot of skeptics claim that the Bigfoot phenomenon is only as old as the Patterson-Gimlin film, you know, and before that there was hardly nothing, but they totally overlooked the fact that the hairy cannibal giants is a cultural archetype that's been around for thousands of years, you know. The earliest writing that we have dealt with cannibal giants, hairy cannibal giants, you know. So that would be the Beowulf and Grendel deal. So I totally believe that these are the same creatures that's been around for forever. And it's only just now that people are really starting to, the majority of people are really starting to look at that seriously, you know. So yeah, it's a very, very old phenomenon, not a new one at all. The Bigfoot term is new, relatively new, but they were known by 1,000 different names in 1,000 different locations across the world before that.
So why do you think they're more prevalent now? Is it because people like yourself and I'm talking about this subject, or is it because they're making the presence known more?
Well, I like to think it's a little of each, Paul. I like to think that, you know, now people are more free to come forward and discuss what they've seen, whereas in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, if you did that, you faced real consequences, you know, negative consequences, and people have lost their families and their jobs and even their lives by coming forward with their inhumanoid experiences. But now we don't see that type of negative repercussions for people coming out and telling what they've seen. So that's got something to do with it. But I also think that the activity itself is ramping up tremendously. And not just Bigfoot, but Dogman and a lot of these other humanoids are starting to show themselves for whatever reasons more frequently now than they've ever done before. So you have to ask yourself, why now? You know?
Yeah. That's the mighty why. That's the question, isn't it? A massive word, 3-letter word. So Les, I would, if you've no more questions for 20 minutes or so, I would love Barton to tell us about. Is it 1975, Barton? And if you don't mind, the Scottsville Monster, because I'm sure any listeners that have not heard this would be enthralled.
Right. So I was 9 years old in 1975 when we moved back. It was the first house that we moved back from the city after my mother saw that UFO 3 or 4 years earlier. And we moved to, it was a perfect location. It was a little isolated farmhouse near the Green River. You know, we didn't have running water or anything like that, but we loved the house. You know, we had an outhouse that we had to use, and which is nothing, you know, new to us. You know, we were, like say, we were dirt poor, and some of the houses we lived in didn't have electricity or anything, but this was a really perfect location for us. Also, heavy Native American presence there in antiquity, burial mounds, artifacts everywhere. We moved into the house we thought was going to be a perfect place, but little did we know that we'd spend the next 11 months being terrorized by these 8-foot tall, hairy monsters with red eyes, you know. And so the activity just escalated, you know, it was almost nightly. And eventually we had to move out of there. 11 months later, these things ran us out of our house, but you know, they ended up killing all of our animals and a bunch of the animals of the people that lived in neighboring farms, you know. And they killed a horse or a pony. They killed a goat. They killed about 250 chickens. The only thing that they didn't end up killing was our 2 vicious dogs. We had really vicious dogs, which you have to have if you want to make a go at it in the country. You know, you have to have a good guard dog, a good 12 gauge, and some chickens for their eggs, right? So we had all that, but our guard dogs, they were so mean that even close family friends couldn't come up to the house and get out of their car. They'd have to wait till we come out and got the dogs away, right? So we had an opening in our underpinning of our house right next to the back steps. And whenever these creatures would come around, our dogs would run underneath the house. So they survived that ordeal because these things couldn't reach them. But all the carcasses that we found, which these things killed, were curiously mutilated. You know, they weren't ripped apart, or there was no bite marks on them or anything like that. They were like surgically sliced from their neck all the way down to their hind legs. All the soft tissue was removed. All their entrails, their eyes, eyeballs, and their tongues were removed, and the rest were just left there to rot, which they didn't rot. No scavenger would light or feed upon these carcasses that these things left. You know, not even a fly would land on them. So, you know, usually you got turkey vultures and just all kinds of things that'll eat dead animals, but not these things. They sat there forever, and it took months and months before they finally started to decay away. If they were never eaten.
How do you explain something that looks so primitive, looks so savage, in your words, surgically removing body parts and eyes and slicing things? It's almost as though they're using tools, but we've no evidence that they're using tools, have we? Have you thought about? You must have thought about how that takes place. You know, I have. Sure. in animals that we've researched in 2017 to 19, similar thing, and I couldn't work out what kind of animal were doing it. So what were your conclusions on that, Barton?
So you have to realize, Paul, that all my experiences took place in high UFO activity areas. So I realized, and I've been thinking about this ever since 1975, I come quickly to the conclusion that these things had some form of radioactivity in them that kept the predators from eating the bodies. That's the only thing I can think of that would keep a fly from landing on it, you know. So to me, it seems to me that they had help. They didn't carry around knives or anything like that, or scalpels or anything like that. So it would seem to me that such a primitive, beastly creature wouldn't be capable of doing such a thing, right? Surgically removing anything. Yeah. So it seems to me that it was, I lean more toward it was these things were working in tandem with another unexplained phenomenon.
Yeah.
Which would be the UFO phenomenon. And just the year before, someone had seen a UFO come up out of the Green River. It was a couple of coon hunters down close to our house in that same area, and they saw one of these flying discs come up out of the Green River and take off. So pretty sure, not 100%, but I'm pretty sure that these things do not work alone, and that the UFO Bigfoot connection is a real one. Even though everyone says, I get so tired of hearing this, you can't use one mystery to explain away the other. Well, yeah, you can if it's true. There's no flaw in that logic if it's actually true. So that's where I stand on that. I just don't see that they could even slice an animal open, perfectly clean cut, with even sharp fingernails. It would seem an impossibility.
Yeah,
to me.
thank you. And just out of interest, how deep is the Green River? I know it'll vary in different places, but you say
Well,
like
there's
a
some
UFO.
places that they've never found the bottom yet.
Right. Okay.
And it's the only river in North America that flows north.
Right.
So, and I think there's one other river in the world that flows north, and so really mysterious things that have been seen in that Green River too. Let me tell you, all kinds of aquatic anomalies.
Don't go there yet, because I want to talk about the turtle.
Okay.
If we
That's
get
the Ohio
time,
River. That happened in the Ohio River.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But let's just stay with Scottsville. So 1975, and how long did it go on for?
11 months.
11 months. So there's you, your brothers and sisters, your mum and dad in this property. Just give us a night of fear. Tell us a typical night when it was active.
Well, these things, at first they were content to stay in the fields and the woods around their house. The back of our house was right next to a big patch of woods, but they eventually got to where they would come up on our porch, bang on our house, growl, turn on doorknobs. But I tell you, one night that really sticks out to me was the night that my mother and dad gathered all of us kids at the kitchen table, and my dad had a 5-gallon bucket and a broom, and he said, this was toward the end of this was well up into our experience, and my dad was, you have to understand, he was the most intelligent, tough man that I've ever seen. He's like an action star in these movies. If he was to make a movie about my dad's life, people would swear that it was fiction, but that was the kind of man he was. He was truly a legend, and people call me a legend and all that stuff, and I don't listen to that because I know what a legend is, and that was my dad. But it was the only situation that he couldn't think his way out of, fight his way out of, or talk his way out of, was this Scottsville Monster thing. And he set us down at the kitchen table one evening, and he said, this is a 5-gallon bucket of kerosene. I want y'all to listen to me really close. And I want y'all to give me an answer. You can think about it, but I'm going to ask you a question. And he said, now, if one of these monsters was these things are so big and powerful, he said, if it wanted to come in this house, that door would not stop it. It would just push the door in. So if that ever happened, and I can't stop it with my shotgun, I'm going to dip this broom in the kerosene and light it up and try to stop it that way with fire. Now, if that don't work, instead of this thing coming in the house and taking one or two of y'all off, and we'd never see you again, we wouldn't know what happened to you. He said, instead of letting that happen, me and your mom has decided that if it ever came to that, I would just kick that bucket of kerosene over and light it, and we'd all go to heaven together. Do you really think that you could live the rest of your life not knowing what happened to your brother or sister? Well, that would be torture. And so we thought about it for a few minutes, and we said, yeah, Dad, we all agree that if it makes its way into the house, just go ahead and burn us all up together. So that's one of the nights that sticks out more than anything. But that just tells you the amount of terror and fear that was going through my father's mind, that he would kill his whole family rather than take the chance of this creature grabbing one of his kids and running away with it.
How many do you think there were, Barton? We were just talking one?
No, there were, and that's a good question, Paul. More than one. And I didn't know this. We moved away in 1975. We moved in town, and we stayed in town 10 years this time before we tried to go back to the country. And went back to the country, and I'll be damned if it wasn't the same stuff all over again, only in a different location. But it was in 2005, I got online, and I got in touch with my dad's best friend, who lived a mile away from our house. And you have to understand that my dad, we had a phone, and 2 or 3 times a week there at the end, my dad would be calling the state police to have them come escort us out of the property, right? Make sure nobody got killed trying to get away. So it come to a point where he would call the police, and they told him, we're not coming out anymore. We're not responding to any more monster calls. You're on your own, which is a hell of a note, right? To tell the citizens that you're on your own. We're not gonna help you. But luckily, my dad had this friend, and he would call him instead. He didn't even, at the end, he didn't even call the police anymore. He just called his friend, and he would come make sure we got out of there okay. So I hadn't talked to him since 1975. I was 9 years old, but in 2005, when I got back online, the first thing I did was look up his phone number and called him. And much to my surprise, once I interviewed this man face to face, the creatures that he was seeing down there, and we had several run-ins, crazy, much crazier than what happened to us. I mean, he's seen these things step in and out of what he called portals 3 times, but the creatures that he was seeing was not the same as what we were seeing. We were seeing the classic Bigfoot, man-ape, right, man-ape, gorilla-type Bigfoot. The things that he was seeing had a short muzzle, long hair, long sharp fangs, and long talons on his hands. So he was seeing a totally different type of inhumanoid than we were, which means that there were 2 different types of inhumanoids inhabiting the same area at the same time, working in tandem with each other. And I've been looking for that, another account like that for 40 years, and I finally found one in a man named Martin Groves, who had an experience down in Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area in 1993 that involved both Bigfoot and Dogman. Yeah,
we really want to get Martin on this on our live stream. To be honest with you,
it's fantastic. It's a fantastic speaker, and he's a 32-year law enforcement veteran. And he's totally one of the most credible witnesses, if not the most credible witness I've ever spoken to.
I would agree. I listened to a podcast, Martin talking, and I think I told Les, I said, this is probably the most authentic kind of account I've ever heard.
Right.
Really, really good. And you tell him that if you speak to him, please, Barton, because
I sure will. I'll speak to him quite often. And
one more thing, I listened to you talking about the Scottsville Monster, and I looked through the comments, and I'll have to find out the link where you were talking about it, because there's a guy in the comments said he went to school with the Nunley family.
Oh, really?
And you'll have to look down the comments. I'll find you the link.
I hope he wasn't one of the ones that made fun of us when we told that at school, because we were really treated like crap at school, right?
No, this guy believed you. He says they were telling the truth. It's
yes,
there.
We were.
And from reading between the lines, I think he might have got a bit of experience himself. So I'll find the link.
Great. Sure, I'd love to talk to him.
So just staying with this, because it's relative to it. The red eyes, were they glowing?
No. I thought that they would have their own bioluminescence, but when I talked to this man in 2005, he said they didn't glow, but they were red. They were colored red. So,
okay.
The local news station, they get their news from the police scanner, right? So they heard my dad calling the cops, and the cops was coming out to our house for such and such. And before you know it, they had a news crew out there interviewing all of us, right? And we told them everything that happened. It was perfectly truthful. Of course, most people didn't believe it, but after that article was published, we had hundreds of monster hunters descend on Henderson County, Kentucky, from all over the nation looking for the Scottsville Monster.
And did they?
Ironically, the newspaper, whoever wrote that article, misnamed the road that we lived on. We lived on Mound Ridge Road, but in the newspaper it was Mound Hill Road. So not a single one of those monster hunters made it to our house in our location to hunt this monster. So it's kind of ironic.
So I noted that you said that you'd got people on the roof shooting at these things. How many people?
There was like 5 people up there, and they were fully armed, and several of them didn't believe us. You know, they were just.
Well, that's what I was
family
going to say, Barton. No disrespect, then. Were they chasing shadows, or did they see this thing?
So I'll tell you what happened, Paul. They were on that roof, and he was up there for 2 or 3 hours, and they were just about ready to give up and come down when they heard a huge growl come from the wood line, which was maybe 15 yards from the roof in the back. And then they heard a dog yelp. So they all opened fire where they heard the sound, right? The thing never did come out. But it's a good thing that it didn't, because they were so scared. They were falling off the roof, jumping off the roof, and just doing anything they could to get in the house, you know. But the next day they opened fire, and it sounded like World War II out there. And the next day we went out and looked, and we could see where they'd shot the woods all up and everything. We didn't find anything, no tracks, no blood, but another carcass of another dead dog, mutilated just like all the other ones, and it was laying right there where that creature was standing. So I do believe, honestly, that if these things could be killed, they would have killed it that night, and the mystery would have been solved for 50 years now.
Yeah, so these dogs, did they belong, because you talk about having your own 2 mean dogs, they belong to the guys who'd come?
No, they belong, we don't know. We never did find out who any of the dogs belonged to. They drug them up from somewhere, soon the neighboring farms, which was, about a mile away. But they never got our dogs. Our dogs was too smart. And a matter of fact, that's how we know that the creatures were around, is we could hear our 2 dogs bumping their heads on the floorboards beneath our feet.
All right.
We'd hear that, and my dad would say, "Oh, hell, here comes the thing. Here comes the monster."
That was your alarm system. Yeah.
That was our alarm system, right?
Yeah. So before you moved there, then, were you warned? Did anybody sort of say to you, you don't really want to be going there? Did other people know about the presence of these things?
Right. The person who lived there, when we went to look at the place, I actually warned my dad that the previous summer, which would have been 74, that he was sitting at the kitchen table, and he had the back door there open. Because when we went to the house, we noticed that they had wood strips nailed across the back screen door, and there were holes all in it, so they put the wood strips there. And my dad asked him, he said, what's up with all those holes in the back screen door? And he told him that the previous summer that he'd been sitting at that table drinking coffee, and he just got the strangest feeling that something was watching him, and it made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He turned around, and there was this 8-foot tall, he called it a hairy fella, looking at him through the back screen door. And he said he was so scared he didn't know what else to do. He had his rifle there by the door, and he said he just grabbed it and put about 16 shots right through the screen door into this creature, this big hairy fellow that was looking at him. And he said it just turned and ran off. And when he got his wits about him, he went out to see if he knew for sure that he'd hit it. But he went out, there was no blood, there was no footprints, there was nothing to indicate that the thing had ever been standing there. And he did warn my dad that it was probably still around, but my dad, at that time, he wasn't scared, because we'd already went through with the brown man at the Boost farm, right? And it ran away when it was shot at. So my dad figured, there's nothing that a 12-gauge shotgun can't take care of. But he was wrong about that.
Yeah, brilliant. Honestly, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, and if not, because we've got about 30 minutes left, and I know, have we got more questions, Les? But we'll leave them till last. And if we can get Barton, if possible, to talk about the LBL a little bit, please. and your your research, your boots on the ground observations of being in that location?
Well, I've been going down there for, like I say, 15 years now. In 2007, me and Grindel Films did a documentary called Hunt the Dog Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
No, but right, I just need to draw back a bit. It's my fault, Barton. Just give them an overview, because I'm just saying LBL, and some people might not be aware of what we're talking about.
So LBL stands for the Land Between the Lakes. It's a national recreation park there in south central Kentucky, and a lot of stories have come out of there about people getting killed by these dog man creatures, these werewolves. They didn't call them dog man. That's a relatively new term. They called them werewolves. And all the old timers I talked to down there, they'd never heard of a dog man. But if you asked them if they ever seen a werewolf, they'd say, "Oh yeah, well, I know what you're talking about there." So
that's the page we're on with Wolflands.
Right. Allegedly, a family of 4 people was killed down there in 1982, and there was a woman that was writing about it online, and she said she heard it from 2 cops. So I went down there and interviewed her, and got her testimony on camera. And really, we've never been able to come up with any evidence at all that there's a dog man down there. And just a few weeks ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, did you read what such and such posted on his Facebook page?" And I'm like, "No, I don't really pay attention to people much, especially when it comes to Bigfoot and Dogman and stuff like that." He said, "Well, you should go read his post." So I went to his page and read his post, and it basically said, "Well, I've been going to LBL for several years now, and I haven't seen one iota, one speck of evidence that would lead me to believe that there's a dog man down there. So my conclusion is there's no dog men down there. No one's ever been attacked down there. It's all BS. Bring your family down, have fun, blah, blah, blah." And that just really struck me as being quite arrogant and a little bit reckless. It's like me saying, well, I lived in Florida for 7 months, and I must have swam in that ocean 100 times, and no shark ever attacked me in that ocean. So I don't believe a shark ever attacked anyone in that ocean, right?
Yeah, good analogy.
And well, I've been going in there a lot longer than he has, and I've never found any evidence to corroborate that story either. But that's not enough for me to totally discount the dozens of eyewitness testimonies that I have from people down there who have seen it and experienced it and heard about the murders in 1980s and all that. But so yeah, well, we're finally going to get some answers, I think, about what's going on in LBL. And there is definitely dog man down there. And not only that, there's Bigfoot down there. And I might be so bold as to posit that there's more Inhumanoids than that down there as well. You've got the government working secretly underground. It's basically the Land Between the Lakes is one big cemetery. There's like 225 or 230 cemeteries there, that's still surviving after they flooded the area in 1963.
Okay.
So I just recently talked to a woman whose mother and grandfather had experience down there in 1948. So I've just recently collected the oldest account of a dog man in LBL, which predates government presence there by 15 years. So I think we have at least 2 different types of dogmen creatures down there. And one of them the government's creating for whatever reason. The other one, not so much.
So
that's the LBL.
Can you give us a little bit of that 1948 account, or is it not something you don't want to talk about? Yeah.
No, I can tell you a little bit. I haven't released the video on it yet, and it'll probably be a couple weeks before I do that. But her mother and dad was driving down a road near Golden Pond, and when this 7-foot tall, hairy creature stepped out into the middle of the road with a wolf's head, and this woman's mother was in the back. She was 9 years old, and she didn't have a seatbelt on. I don't even know if they made seatbelts back then, but her grandfather, who was driving the car, had to swerve and brake so suddenly that it threw her out of the car, and she hit her head on the road and had to get a metal plate put in her head over that. So, and she's still living today. She's 84 years old. I did ask to speak to her directly, but she was unable to do that. So I interviewed her granddaughter, who told me what was going on and what happened. And she told me, I said, well, your granddad, so they've lived in LBL for a long time. She said, yeah. I said, did he ever mention anything, about any creatures down there? She said, yeah. My whole life, he was telling me not to go outside after dark or the werewolf would get me. I said, werewolf? She goes, yep, that's what he called it, a werewolf. And I never really knew what happened to my mother. She would have these spells sometimes. She went on to become a brilliant microbiologist, but she would have spells where she'd forget everything and everyone. And she said, I finally asked my grandfather what was wrong with my mother and why she was acting so strangely. And he told her that's what happened, that they had almost hit a dog man in the road there in 1948. So, yeah, that's the oldest, I believe that's the oldest account that anyone's ever gotten from that place, which confirms the presence of these creatures there before the government.
Right. So we've got the presence of the creatures there, 1948, and then we've got the government presence. Now, are they there because of those creatures being there, or have they introduced something else? Just touch on the government presence then for us, please.
So yeah, one rumor is that they came to LBL and they flooded the valleys to contain these creatures. Now that's just a rumor. Of course, nobody knows if it's true, but it would seem to me, since wolves know how to swim just fine, that wouldn't be a very good way to contain them now. So I know that they were there before the government, and I know that they're there now. And according to, like I say, there's all kinds of people coming out with stories now. They're ex-law enforcement, ex-military, telling us about this government involvement with this dogman phenomenon. So, yeah, I'm going to get to the bottom of it eventually.
So what obviously, don't go into any detail if you don't want to, but what is the extent of the government involvement? We've got a guy who comes in chat, and a guy that I speak to, I don't know if Rick's been in chat tonight, he'd have loved this, but he believes that, we'll call it the dogman, the werewolf phenomena, it's a manufactured creature. That's what he believes. And what are your views on anything like that? Is that where you're going with the government involvement?
Right. So the government, like I say, they come out with soft disclosure on these chimera projects that they're working on. So I do believe that the government is creating these wolf-man hybrids down there, and for whatever reason, I think of a few reasons, but they're all speculation. I don't know for sure, but I believe they are creating them down there for a specific reason, and a lot of evidence has pointed me to that. Like, say, a year ago, I would probably laughed at that notion, but not now. I know a lot more than I did a year ago, and I would say that the government is involved with creating these genetically engineered hybrids there.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to jump briefly back to the Scottsville Monster. Would you consider going back? Well,
actually, I only live about 3 miles from the house. I've been living there.
So obviously now you've got such a vested interest in it through lifelong experiences. Obviously, I mean, it's clear you're entrenched within the subject matter, Barton. Have you been back with any regularity to the location?
Well, several times actually, and that was to speak to the woman who lives there. So the house was torn down 2 or 3 decades ago, and she had a trailer put in. She lives in a trailer there at the spot, and I went to talk to her. She was a good friend with my mom and dad, and she's lived there since 1975. Claims that she hasn't had any more problems there, no creatures or anything like that, but she had a couple kids, and the kids knew my dad's friend back then. And when I was interviewing him in 2005, I asked him that. I said, do you know if they're still having problems down there? And he said, well, her name is Pat. He said, Pat claims or not, but according to her kid who come down, he was so scared one night, asked to, called up here and asked to spend the night with my daughter. They're still having problems there. So
Really?
one thing I don't do anymore, Paul, is look for Bigfoot.
No.
I have no wish to find him.
Is
I know what he's about. I know I can't do if I was to find him, I can't do anything about it. I would be at his mercy.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think I'd probably feel exactly the same. How much then? So this lady claims she's having no experiences down there. There's nothing happening. There's a slightly different story from her children. But how much do you think is brought about by human emotion? And I don't mean it's not happening. I mean, it's real. But I'll just jump to the poltergeist phenomena briefly, which might make a little bit of sense. So when that begins, you kind of perceive that there's something happening just on the peripheral. It's just a little bit of, oh, that was strange. And as you become a little bit more interested, you get drawn into it and the activity ramps up. And then you see things moving about. Then you could even have a physical being touched or scratched. How much do you think of the human emotion and the human interaction with these entities enhances the experience? Just like your family, you knew it were real. You were in the heat of the moment and it were happening. She might be a totally different personality, this lady. Do you know what I mean? It's probably still there. Or how much do you think human emotion has to play in it?
It's definitely still there. And the thing you have to understand, Paul, is that people, especially people from Kentucky, we don't just go around telling people the strange things that happen to us, right? Because inevitably people think that you're crazy and you lose standing or whatever. Like I said, it's not as bad now as it used to be, but I do believe things are still happening there, and she just does not want to come forth and tell anyone.
Do you struggle to get witnesses in the locality then to come forward?
Still, no, I don't struggle at all. I've had witnesses every year. Like I say, the things are still going on here, and it's not just down there at that farm. It's all over Henderson County, the whole county. You know, we're surrounded by Green River and the Ohio rivers, and all kinds of wood, thousands of acres of river bottoms, which only the farmers go there. People really don't go there. So everything is still going on in right here in Henderson, Kentucky, and I was able to trace the residents of that house of Mountain Ridge Road all the way back to 1935, and every single one of them had experiences with these creatures. So I believe she's just keeping it to herself, and I really can't blame her.
Well, that's brilliant, Barton. And I'm not trying to sell a book here, people, but I've heard absolutely amazing things about Barton's book, The Inhumanoids. So I want to read it myself.
Well, thanks, Paul.
It's all there. A lot of the information's there. I know your experiences are in Mysterious Kentucky. The book. There's 2 books of Mysterious Kentucky. Am I right, or is there 3?
Right, volume 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Yes, I might do another one. The material just keeps gathering, and I've got to do something with it. So I'll probably eventually end up writing the 3rd volume to that.
I don't know whether people have realised, and I don't know if Les or you can see it, but I think my camera's a bit faulty because it's flicking here for me. I don't know if people can see it, but it's not to do with what Les has set up. It'll be my camera. Right then, Barton, what I call the lower silence, other people call the woo.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that with the presence of these creatures, or with the UFO phenomena, or your witnesses? Have they reported everything going quiet?
Oh yeah, and it's very strange. So my brother of our family, my older brother, saw this thing the best. It was quite close, and he said he was out trying to get our little nieces out of the front yard. They were playing with some garden hose that they shouldn't have been playing with, and it was broad daylight. And he said, "Y'all better put those hose down, or the monster's going to get you." And he said, as soon as he said that, he heard the loudest commotion ever in those woods, and everything got really, really quiet. There were no birds, no insects making any noise. And he said he just looked over, and there was that thing standing there, broad daylight. And I've talked to many, many other witnesses, hundreds, in fact, that all experience a uncanny quiet that comes over an area before these things appear. The tree frogs will quit croaking, and the crickets will quit singing, and it's almost like not even an insect wants to be noticed by these things when they come into an area, and they just shut up, and they don't make any more noise until it's gone. And my dad always told me, I remember when I was young, and the crickets were in the country, they were kind of deafening, right? So my dad always said, he goes, son, the crickets are your friends. He said the noise that they make is your friend. He said, as long as everything's okay and you hear that noise, he said, that everything's fine and there's no danger around. But when they stop, that's when you know that something is around, and they'll give you that warning if you pay attention. The crickets doing their night songs or singing, everything's fine. But when they stop, you need to be aware that something's out there that's making those crickets stop. So inevitably, the Bigfoot does that. They quiet down every time.
It's so interesting. But don't you think it's a coincidence that your friend said that, and then that happened? It's almost as though these things are observing, and unintentionally, your friend said something that's, because obviously these things must understand how we think and our intention, should we say, because it's the craziness began after your friend or your dad's friend said that, the monster's going to get you, and suddenly it's occurring.
Right. That was my brother, my older brother that said that. Yeah. It is strange. Yeah. But my dad told me that about the crickets long before that, the Scottsville incident. But it is strange, and it might have to do. Another thing that I've learned is that these Bigfoot creatures do possess some form of limited mind control over people. So it could be that it's that they're projecting this silence into people's minds. Gigantopithecus couldn't do that. I'm sure. We don't have one, of course, but there was no natural species of ape that is capable of doing the things that these things can do, and including the limited mind control. So whether these things actually quiet down when the creature's around, or it's something in your mind, is something that I don't yet know. All I know is that I've taken hundreds of reports where everything goes deathly quiet when these things are around. So
and that silence, the lower silence, kind of goes across the board with lots and lots of different examples of different unexplained phenomena. But Barton, we've got about 14 minutes left, so I'm going to ask Les if he's got any questions, and we'll run to some of them. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Yep, excellent. Are we good to go, Les?
Yes, and thanks for pointing out the
Brilliant.
problem with your camera tonight, Paul.
Yeah, I can see it flickering, so I think it's a new camera, people. I think I'm going to have to get one, but we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just have to live with that for the rest of tonight's show. Right, okay, so I've got to say thanks for Alison for being our moderator tonight. She's doing a sterling job. She has sent me a load more questions through, and one of the questions is from I've got a good one here from Blue Shift. Blue Shift is saying Barton is gold standard when it comes to credibility, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and that's the reason that I'm not really popular. You don't see me on TV every time you turn on a cryptid show. Is I do not toe the narrative that these things are evolutionary throwbacks from primates. I have to be true. I have to stand true to what I know and what I've learned, and like I say, that's what I do, and that's how I sleep at night without any problems. And I appreciate you saying that. I really do.
Thank you. I have to say that I consider ourselves lucky because you don't do lots of podcasts, do you?
No, I used to, Paul, but I realized that if I was to do every podcast that someone asked me to do, I would have no time for myself. So really, after this one, I'm gonna step back again, and so I'd already retired from this years ago, But Josh Turner and Johnny Henderson brought me back into it. And but like, yeah, I get 5 or 6 requests a week to do these podcasts, and I just don't have time to do it.
Well, we
If I
appreciate
did
it. Thank you.
everybody, and it makes me feel bad that I can't do everyone's. Obviously, I do a few, but there's no way that I can do all that everyone wants me to do, and I apologize for that. I just don't have the time to do it.
Don't apologise. You're here, and we're grateful. Thank you.
Well,
I've got a question.
Go on then, Les.
I've got a question from Warren Hardcastle, and I don't know if you can condense this answer or how long you want to talk about this one. Could Barton give an overview of the Martin Groves experience?
Sure. Well, him and a buddy was down in the LBL turkey hunting in 1993, and they were separated, and Martin was coming back to camp when he started hearing these whistles and tree knocks. And when he got back to camp, it was just about dark, and they saw this dogman creature come up on them. And I believe that the whistles, we know that dogs can't whistle. I would assume that the dog man can't whistle. So I assume that it was the Bigfoot calling this dog man in for its meal. So the dog man came in, and they both fired on the creature, and it disappeared. And they ran to their vehicle and turned on the headlights, and there was 2 Bigfoot standing right there. So they got out of there, and luckily they got out, and that's just really condensing it all. There was a lot more that happened, and there's a lot about that story that Martin has yet to reveal to the public. So, but I'll let him do that himself. But it's really a unique story. Like I said, I was looking for 40 years to find someone who had experienced 2 different types of Inhumanoids in the same place, and there was Martin. I turned on a documentary, American Werewolves, and there was him telling about that, and it struck me when he said that. Wow, I've been waiting all this time, and here's this guy that's had basically the same thing happen to him. So I called him immediately, and it was right before the Josh Turner's first annual Dogman conference there in Tennessee. And I called Martin and spoke to him, and he's just a great guy, salt of the earth kind of guy. And I don't do a lot of public speaking. That was the first and only time that I've ever spoken public, was at that conference. And I offered Martin half my speaking time to get up there and tell his story. And I didn't tell anyone about it. So when he got up there and started speaking, everybody was like, who in the world is this guy? But by the time he was done, everybody knew who he was. And
brilliant account.
There was over 400 people in that conference hall, and not a one of them made a sound during his speech. You could have heard a pin drop in there.
Josh has asked me to talk, this coming year, and I'm going to make efforts to get there. So we'll probably meet up. But anyway, more questions, Les, please.
Yes, I do. I think all these unexplained phenomena, each one is designed to elicit a paradigm shift in the witness. And if I think it's all goes back to a diabolical source. Like I say, if it needs to appear as a missing link, then that's what it'll appear as. If it needs to appear as a little green man, then it can do that too. So it's all designed, it's all connected, it's all designed to get you to think the wrong things and believe the wrong things. I believe. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and for those who didn't hear that question, it was from Lee Roscoe, and he was asking if all the things are connected by the paranormal. Right, so I'll move on to let's have a look. Darren Cooper, Barton, how close have you been to UFOs? As I've stood just 6 foot underneath one myself, it's a feeling you have. If you've been close, did you feel it within you? And And did you know it was there if you have been close to one?
No, I've never been that close to one. I've always seen them up in the sky, and I don't want to get that close to one. That just suits me just fine if I never see another one, really. But something always compels you to look, you know. I was driving home from work and something just made me look out that passenger side window, and, you know, something always compels you to look up. But luckily, I've never had any problems with the UFO phenomenon. I've never been abducted. I almost got killed one night. I truly believe something crawled into my bed with me one night. And after I was speaking about Bigfoot, I don't think it had anything to do with the UFOs, though. So just lucky and glad that I haven't had any problems like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that, Barton. Sebastian is asking, I've had so many reports referring to a green flash before a sighting, or right as something disappears around these mounds and barrows. Do you think the green belt / Fey realm is connected to this?
Well, I don't know. I've never experienced any green flashes like that. But like I say, it's all connected one way or another. You just have to find out how and logically explain it. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's connected, yeah.
We have reports of flashes of light seen, and then people experiencing missing times. Missing time, should I say? I mean, that were a question, missing time. But I don't want to go. We've literally got 5 minutes left, and if you can fit these questions in, yeah, let's get through these, please, as many as we can.
Yeah, Mark Jones is saying no one has recreated the Patterson-Gimlin film footage, and he wonders why.
Well, I can tell you right now, if you give me $10,000, I'll do my best and it'll probably get really, really close. Give me $10,000 in a couple of weeks to work on the costume like Patterson did, you know, shave a little bit of it off here and there, add a little bit here and there, which I believe he did. It might cost $20,000 today, but you give me the money and I think I can do it. I mean, it doesn't seem that hard, especially when you got a man that walks exactly like Patty. And I know people don't want to look at that and believe it, but if you will watch Bob Hieronymus walking, there is no difference.
Okay.
I got one from Fred Flintstone, and welcome to the show, Fred. Why do cryptids physically attack animals but not humans?
Right. Well, who's to say that they don't physically attack humans? There's looking at the LBL, Martin Grove stood up at the conference in front of 450 people and told everyone that the law enforcement down there knew of at least 18 people that had been attacked, killed, or disappeared in that one spot. So I believe they do attack humans. You know, while they don't do it more often, I guess we have the good Lord to thank for that. But I honestly believe that they do. So
I wish we'd more time because I'd have touched on the religious element and people, but I can't. I want to get through the questions, but you know, yeah, go on, Les.
Okay, Mark Thomas is asking, have you tried talking to the interdimensional entities with telepathy?
No, I'm not interested in talking to interdimensional entities. I'm not interested in making contact. I want to make contact with one more in my life. That's because I give my word that I would, and then I want to be done with it. So I give my word that I would take my swords down to LBL and try to kill this dog man that's killing people, and including children, because it's not right to me. It doesn't sit right with me when I have dozens of ex-Marine and ex-law enforcement and ex-Navy SEALs are all sitting around talking about this stuff, and nobody is doing anything to help it or stop it. So I give my word that I would do that, and I've been doing it for about a year now. I've been down there 5 or 6 times trying to get these things to come out. So far, they haven't come out on me, but if they do, I'm going to do my best to fulfill my word, and then I'll be done. I don't want any more contact with any Inhumanoid ever.
As crazy as that sounds, Barton, that was going to be a question, because and we haven't got time, so don't answer it. But I do know that you have been going into these locations with what you call primitive weapons,
Yes.
Because you basically said the gun's not going to do anything to them anyway. But Les, so Barton has not just said that, people. He's been saying that for a while now. So yeah.
And I've actually been doing it, and I'm not filming it, and I'm not trying to be famous for it. I'm not trying to be anything other than what I am. There's no networks behind me, assuring that I'm going to be famous. But I'll do it, and I'll do it in private, and hopefully I can get it done without getting killed.
I think I might be able to squeeze one more question in from Patricia Adams, right? And it's probably a quick answer to this one. Do you think these Inhumans are tailored to each
Could be. It's funny how all these Inhumanoids can speak to people telepathically in their own language, no matter what country they come from, right? So it could be, yes, but I believe they're all basically the same throughout the world, and they're all here for like I say, to get you to think the wrong way about certain things that are really important. You might not think they're important now, but then later on they're going to be really important, what you believe and what you don't.
Barton, honestly, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. Viewers, I'm sorry about my camera jumping about there. It's even annoyed me, so I know it must be annoying other people watching, but I'm going to end it there for myself. Barton, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
And on that note, I've got to thank everybody for being in tonight's stream, coming on, all the great questions we had on tonight for Barton. Really, really appreciate it. And as I'll just echo what Paul says, Barton's been a great guest tonight and really enjoyed him on the Truth Proof stream. At this point, I've got to wish you all a good night, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.